Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Love Encompassed podcast. I'm Phil.
I am Victoria.
And we are excited about today. We're going to get right into it. Today, we are talking about baggage.
Baggage.
Wow. I like it.
When we were recording, because we do the video recording too, if you guys don't know, we have YouTube. So you can watch our podcast as well. But when I said, I am Victoria, you ever see
the Target lady on Saturday Night Live?
I lifted my fist up like, darn it, I am Victoria. So I had to keep up with the theme.
Oh, gotcha.
No.
Which is perfect for baggage. You brought the baggage of Saturday Night Live into our podcast. Thank you for that.
That's a good little skit they got there.
Yeah, so today, baggage, we got endless amounts of material for baggage. Baggage that you bring into relationships, baggage that you bring into marriage, baggage that you just bring into life, just your job, everywhere else. So talk a little bit about what baggage, quote, looks like.
Yeah, so baggage basically is things that we carry from past relationships, past hurts, past trauma, childhood experiences, whatever that we haven't dealt with that we carry with us, tends to carry in our relationships. So that's what I would classify as baggage.
Yeah, so baggage for me, like when we first got together, so a little bit of my background is my parents were divorced when I was about 14, 15 years old. My mom had an affair. And that there was some infidelity there that obviously it was baggage for me that I didn't realize I had. So then when we get together, I was like, where you at? She'd be like, I'm at Walmart. I'm like, with who? And she's like, myself. I just left. But I had this baggage, and that baggage became a filter for everything for me in my life. And so I had trust issues, I had insecurities, I had these things that I had to process through, and we had to sit and talk about.
Yeah, and I as well brought some baggage. My quick little background is my parents had a very unhealthy relationship. My dad had multiple affairs on my mom. And then sometimes being the middle child, kind of feeling like I was, kind of forgotten. And so I kind of felt at times like my voice wasn't heard, or I wasn't seen, or I didn't have a value. So when we got together, you had your stuff, but then, you would do something, right? Because like I also, like a childhood was like, very strict. So you weren't allowed to do a lot of stuff. And the mindset of like we talked about in our submission podcast, which was like you felt like you just really didn't have much to say. You had to do what you were told, outside of like what would be normal. And so when you would be like, hey, I don't like it when you do this. I asked you not to do it. And instead of me hearing a reasonable man, loving man say, hey, babe, I just care about you. Could you not?
Right.
I would react and be like, you not my daddy and you not going to tell me what to do. And he was like, whoa.
You're right. I'm not your father. That's 100% correct.
Yeah. But basically, instead of us operating in the beginning, we had a great relationship in the beginning, but instead of us operating normally, if that's a thing, like in the beginning of our marriage, what a normal person who didn't experience trauma or didn't have baggage would respond to and be like, oh, okay, whatever. Our past experiences, the baggage that we brought from our childhood and everything else, came to the forefront. And so that is what was responding. So it wasn't like, oh, she just went to the store. It was, well, why were you gone so long?
Why did you want to go to this store?
Or it was
for
stuff
groceries,
like,
sure.
Yeah, but it wasn't even just in a marriage. It was in dating. Like I remember one time, because I grew up in a big family. I had like 4 or 5 siblings. And so it was and it wasn't a big house. So, I valued the moments that I could just be quiet and away and like the
Alone.
silence. And I'll never forget one time you had called me and you was like, hey, you want to come over tonight? And I was like, oh no, I'm tired. I'm just gonna stay home. Well, what's wrong? You don't want to be around me?
Right.
Do you what's going on?
Well, I had lived on my own for so long. I had been on my own for a while at that point. And so it was like, there was part of me, hey, I didn't want to be alone. And here's the thing about baggage too. It's like, you don't really know you have it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the junk drawer in your house. You don't really know all the stuff that's in there. Mm-hmm. You put it in there at one point, but you don't really know until you start getting in there. And I think with baggage, I really didn't know what it was until we started to date. And you start looking at yourself and you're like, why am I reacting this way? Yeah. Or you would be like, dude, what is your deal? Yeah. And I'm like, I got no deal.
Breathe. It's suffocating. I'm not going anywhere. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. She likes her alone time. And I'm like, cool, as long as we're together.
Yeah. Yes.
You can be alone all you want as long as we're together.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes what happens is baggage starts to really fog how you look at things.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I think for us, we've always kind of been the type of people where it's like, hey, let's start to figure out why I'm acting this way.
I wouldn't want to say that was probably you more so than I, because I don't think I really started becoming aware of like, why am I responding this way? Why am I reacting this way until further down the road, even like after we got married and we did the whole journaling thing and you gave me the idea to start journaling. But I would probably say like the first time I was like, Victoria, what in the world, girl, was when I did kind of react that way towards you the first time and kind of snapped. And after the dust had settled and you came back to me and you were just like, hey, I just want to talk about like what happened. Like, I'm not your dad. I'm not going to do what your dad did. I love you and all these different things. And so in that moment, I was just like, I appreciated the reassurance. And the thing is, like, I knew you as a person. I knew before we even got engaged, like, right. You know, you're opposite of everything I saw and experienced. And so when you said that, for me, it was more so like, okay, Victoria, you need to get it together.
Amen.
But even in saying get it together, it was more so like, okay, Victoria, he's not him. So and it's not like my dad's like this awful person. He just had some poor behavior.
Yeah, I mean,
so I'm not coming. Yeah. He's not like an awful person. He just had some bad behavior. But unfortunately, that bad behavior for me created pieces of trauma that I had to work through, especially in our relationship. And so it wasn't in that moment where I was just like, okay, I obviously am dealing with some past, blah, 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 blah. In that moment, that didn't happen. I didn't come to that realization. I didn't even have the name trauma for it until, honestly, about a year or two ago. But I always just packaged it as I had a really jacked up, interesting childhood. And I'm just like, I survived it. And you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the thing is you don't, like I said, I don't think you really realize you have it until you have trigger points that start to happen. Or like in that moment with you, it was like, what you not going to do is. And it was like, whoa, what are you freaking out about? But it's like that thing that gets on the inside of you that I remember even being at church and you would like talk to somebody, like a dude or whatever. And I'd be like, this is after we're married, after we've had kids. And I'm like, who's she talking? She's smiling just a little too much. He ain't that funny. I'm funny. I'm a comedian. He ain't that funny. Why is she smiling like that?
But that's real. I don't think I ever like, I could honestly say I never was worried if you would ever step out on me.
I don't know if it was necessarily that I was ever worried. I think it was just that insecurity of like with that. It's like, why is she laughing so hard at that joke?
Well, that's real. I can see.
Because then in the car, I'd be like, what was so funny? And then you would tell me like funny and you'd be laughing. You'd be like, oh, they said blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, it ain't that funny. I mean, it's not as funny as you're making it out to be.
Yeah, I get it. I think for you, it showed up definitely, and that's so interesting that you say it brought up as, it showed up for you as insecurity, because that's how baggage can show up sometimes. It shows up in many different forms in our relationships.
That's a good point.
It can show up as insecurity. It can show up as trauma or trigger responses. It can show up as overcompensating for things. I mean, there's so many different ways that how it can show up. For you, it showed up as insecurity. For me, it showed up as kind of how I responded that day was, what you not gonna do. It's more of like a defense mechanism that you put up, because it's the fear. For me, it was the fear of, I don't want to experience what I experienced. So because I don't want to experience what I'm going to experience, any indicating factor that pops up that says like alert, 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 even if it's not a real threat, it was the fear of, oh, well, no. Okay, Victoria, we gotta, all right. It's like, what is it? The fight or flight. It's like you automatically, for me, I automatically become defensive and like protection mode, because I don't want to experience what I experienced before. Or it would show up as, because I had a really bad habit, or not a really bad habit, I fell into suppression, or the art of suppression, because again, being the middle child and feeling like I wasn't important, so therefore I felt like my voice didn't matter. I didn't feel like I was heard. Even when those moments where I would try to communicate things to my parents, and I kind of felt like it wasn't received, so I felt like my voice was quieted. So I taught myself, well, because I don't matter, my feelings don't matter, and don't even try and voice them. So when things would happen, whether it be in our relationship or just life, that I didn't know how to emotionally process, because I didn't know how to emotionally process from a child, I would suppress and be quiet and withdraw.
Right. And then, so you're suppressing, being quiet, withdrawing. And then I'm over here thinking she's suppressing, she's withdrawing, she's being quiet because it's something I did. So then my insecurities pop out. And then I'm like, what's wrong? What did I do? Is it? And she'd be like, it's nothing. And then I would be like, was it me? Did I do something? Did I say something? And she's like, no, it wasn't. But it's like, now you see how both people's baggage starts coming into play. And then all of a sudden there becomes walls in between couples, or even in relationships or whatever. But I guess my question that I was thinking about as you were talking is, we're talking about it, but it's like, okay, so let's say you're dating somebody, or maybe you just got married, or whatever it is. How do you identify, like, because it'd be messed up for you just to be like, dude, you got some baggage.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
you got baggage.
Yeah.
And you need to deal with that baggage.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you recognize it and then say, all right, this is a thing that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
How can I help them process through it?
And that, I would throw a question back at you. It's like, okay, what part of the dating stage are we talking about? Did I just meet this person and we're on our first 2 or 3 days?
I think if you just, no, I'm not, yeah. I think if you recognize within the first date that they got some problems, it's a good time to get out.
I consider a therapist for you.
Yeah. I'm talking more along the lines of, it's serious or whatever, or even in marriage. It's like, man, hey, we've been married a year or two. Because I've known couples that, and we've talked to them. Maybe they've been married a year or two, or maybe it's, 3 or 4 years of marriage. And now all of a sudden they're recognizing things that they didn't see before. And it's like, you start to notice and you start to process through it. And you're like, wait a second, I'm starting to notice that this is how they react to certain things. It's kind of like if you grew up in a household where yelling was normal.
Yeah.
You're going to yell. Or
maybe
you're going to be the polar opposite.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
And you're going to just like shut down and not do anything.
Yeah.
But maybe you don't recognize that until you're with a person for a little while. And now you're like, wait a second.
And sometimes it's not even like, hey, you don't recognize it. Sometimes like in that dating stages at the beginning of it, because
love is blind.
Not just love is blind, love is blind.
So are looks. You're like, they're hot. I'll just deal with whatever problem they got.
But I heard this person say this, that I have listened to before, and he said that, before you get married, while you're dating someone, to experience them in all 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not so much like, oh my gosh, I didn't recognize this, because sometimes it is that love is blind.
Because they may be crazy in the winter.
And they
when you can't go nowhere.
Right.
All the doors are, it's cold outside. You realize how nutsoid they are.
Nutso, special. I think sometimes it's that, but I think it's also because maybe we didn't see them how they are when life happens, or when financial stresses, or when life stresses come.
That's what I'm saying.
We didn't see them in that state. So then, now that we do see them, I don't think it's always the case of I was blind to it. Because sometimes it is that, but sometimes it's just like I just didn't get to see them in this state before, because they weren't put in the pressure cooker to see them in this state, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you didn't see them in the winter.
I didn't see them in the winter.
Look, people are weird in the winter. They get trapped indoors. They don't know what to do.
Sometimes
that's
depression.
why everybody goes to like Florida and warm spots.
Not everybody
the
has.
Well, they go to Florida for
opportunity.
vacations.
They want the sun because the
Right.
scientific reasons of
people
how
are
the sun.
wacko in the winter.
I think it's okay. We're not going there with you. Anyways, to answer your question, like, what do you do? Because that was your question, right? What do you do?
Yeah, what do you do when you recognize something? It's like, oh, because the worst thing you can do is like, let's be honest. If you're married and you recognize something and you're like, oh, you know what? You just like your mom. You're just like your dad.
And I'm grateful that you have never done that.
Right. So it's like, you're just like, it's like, no. I believe that people are the result of things that they've been through in their life, and whether they've processed things correctly or not, or whatever it is, but they're through the things that happened in their life, right? You have compassion and sympathy and empathy for people, but it's like, okay, I've recognized this. We're married. How do we work through this?
Oh, okay. So, because I'm sorry, I was confused. I thought you were meant like during the dating stages.
No.
Okay, so you are married now, and
Yes, we've been married for almost 19 years.
I know,
so you
and
know.
I'm grateful. But the crazy is starting to pop through. Okay, what do you do? I think if it's like a first time situation, I think it depends on how they reacted. I do think you probably have to address it from the jump. I don't think you just keep ignoring it. Like, man, I noticed lately they've been. I would just address it from off the top. Like, hey,
Yeah.
Whoa.
You're crazy.
No, stop it. You and this crazy. Hey, like, you okay? Like, whoa, what was that about? Or maybe when the dust settles, because wisdom and timing in addressing things, going back and being like, hey, you're good, or whatever. Like, I noticed when you, like, hindsight 2020, when you first started doing it, because I was still working through mine, I didn't see it as insecurity. I saw it as doing too much. I was like, bro,
Wow.
you're doing too much. Like, it's not even that deep. But now that I have obviously gotten older and matured and grown and done my own and been doing my own work, I can look back at that and be like, reassure you, hey, just like you did me, like, respectfully,
Yeah.
you did it with me, but you the way I am saying you should do it, you did it with me when we first got together.
Beautiful.
Like, when I kind of had my moment, you immediately were just like, you recognized it, like, hey,
Crazy.
stop. You recognized it and was just like, hey, whatever. And I think you recognized it because we had communicated while we were dating our past experiences and our past traumas.
Yeah.
So when it did show up, I'm grateful that you were aware enough to recognize why, versus for whatever reason, I guess I was just oblivious and I hadn't realized, okay, like, why is he asking me why did I think that person was so funny? Why is he kind of like
Right.
being crazy? But basically, to
Wacko.
answer that question, that's a conversation that needs to be had with your partner. Hey, I'm recognizing that, sometimes when you're in these situations or when this happens, you tend to react this way. Is there a reason why? Or, maybe like internally process and say, okay, I'm noticing, could it be from this or that or the other? It's just really learning your partner and asking those questions and being aware of that it could be a possibility if they have experienced something in the past, and maybe if they haven't expressed that yet to you, like, hey, I'm carrying this baggage, or this baggage is still affecting me. Again, if they're showing signs, just ask and say, hey, is everything okay, or why is it that you do this? And they may not know the answer just yet.
I'm just reminded because sometimes when like Victoria will get worked up or whatever, I always say to her, who hurt you?
Yeah.
Who hurt you that you have to react this way?
Now, he says that as a joke because obviously I've come a far ways.
Joke.
But, I mean, being real, I have come a far ways because I'm grateful that you, and that's another thing I was going to add in thinking about how you handle things. And I think how we both kind of started handling each other.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, you're giving me credit, but I think it's both.
Yeah,
both of us the same way because, like, my insecurities. But I also got to the spot where I started to realize you just have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So there's moments where I'm like, hey, I'm feeling insecure.
Yeah.
So I need you to laugh at all my jokes.
But you had to be aware enough to be honest, right? When you initially were first kind of reacting in that way, you weren't, you probably didn't, I don't know. Did you feel like you knew why in the beginning?
I don't think I really knew why. I think I had, because of the baggage, you start developing preconceived ideas.
That's really good. Yeah.
So it's kind of like the person who's like, everyone's like hurt people. It's like one guy's bad, they're all bad. Yeah. And it's like you start to develop like
defense mechanisms.
Yeah, and just preconceived ideas. Yeah. And so I don't think it was like I recognized it within myself. Because I think sometimes as guys, you're like, I'm not insecure. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a man. And it's like, no, you are insecure.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, just to add to that, as far as how to deal with it with your partner, is I do feel like what we did do with each other was create a safe space for that person. Like, you recognize when you did recognize, like, okay, this is why maybe sometimes she reacts this way or she does this. The way you have loved me has really allowed me the space to heal, to be aware of what is healthy, what is not healthy. And so I believe vice versa for you. When I would recognize, okay, he's probably saying this out of being insecure or whatever, or because of his past experience, or when you would communicate that to me, I would then kind of step up and say, or be more aware of making sure, hey, I'm going to be extra affectionate. I'm going to be extra touchy. I'm going to be extra, and sending my text messages, hey, thinking of you, you're awesome, just to kind of remind you that, hey, you're safe, it's okay, all is well,
I love that because it's really the benefits of being then honest with your partner, right? So if I hold in because of baggage and everything else that I'm feeling insecure, I'm feeling whatever, now I'm dealing with it, okay? And I'm trying to deal with it. But because you're honest with your partner and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I love what you said. Because then you'll start sending text messages. It's like, hey, man, you're awesome. Hey, you're great. You're this and that. And then I start thinking, you know what? She is pretty blessed to have me. And why was I ever insecure?
And you can't have the mindset. I don't believe in the mindset of, well, that's them. They going through that. Why I gotta show up in that way because something they're going through. Well, if that's your mindset, I don't feel like that's a very loving mindset. And the reason
it's not very compassionate.
It's not compassionate. And the reason why I say that is because if I genuinely love this person, this human being in my life, and I believe that together we are better, it's no different if I see someone on the street who may have fell and skinned their knee. Like, oh my gosh, can I help you? Can I get you a Band-Aid? Can I do this, whatever to help you? Like, what do you need? Why wouldn't I extend that same compassion and awareness to my partner? If my partner is hurting emotionally, mentally, or whatever, no, I'm not the root of making sure they are good. That's something they have to work through. But I can help while helping them. Not help while helping them. Yeah. I can help them while they're helping themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I like the example, except for if I saw somebody on the street who skinned their knee. I'm not sure I would stop.
Wow. If you,
like
I'm
if
not
it was
talking
like
about your
if it was a
you
car
are
accident.
on one today.
I'm just saying if it was a car accident, yes. But I mean, if I saw someone like skin their knee, I'm not sure I would ask
I'm
them if they
saying
wanted
you
to
trying.
band
I'm not
it.
saying if I'm in my car and I see somebody trip, I'm like, well, let me pull over. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like if I walk out the store, you know what I'm saying, and I'm walking across the parking lot and I see somebody fall. Oh my gosh, are you okay? I'm not gonna be like laughing and keep it moving.
Do you think that's really what you should do? Because if I ever have fallen, I automatically feel so embarrassed. I think I'd be even worse if someone said, "Are you okay?" Do you remember that? On a completely side note, do you remember that time where you were running to the car and you dropped your purse? The strap broke on your purse.
I do.
You should tell them that story.
Okay, so we
This
weren't.
has nothing to. It is baggage. Your baggage got in the way and tripped you up.
Okay, so we. Ooh, that's a good little.
Boom, nailed
Okay,
it.
you better.
Nailed that.
But okay, so we weren't dating. We were just friends, and we had all went out with a group of friends, and it was like the Applebee's.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had this purse that ladies, that you gotta like. It like clamps, like the strap clamps onto the purse. You know what I'm saying? And so we were leaving.
We went to race.
We were leaving Applebee's, and because we rode together. And you were like, "Let's race to the truck. Let's see who gets there first." I was like, "Bet, let's go." And so we started running, and of course he got longer legs than I do, so I'm like trying to sprint because I want to win. And I guess the heaviness of my purse and the jolt of me jumping from running, you like, and the purse was like jumping up and down, that somehow the straps that was connected on my purse unclicked and dropped, and baby tied my foot up like somebody was like a cowboy,
awesome.
did a lasso and wrapped my legs around.
Said,
I
blah, 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 blah,
fell and hit that ground so hard.
It's priceless.
And the thing is, his homeboy didn't even say, "You okay? You good?" He lost himself, bugging up, laughing, bent
laughing.
over, hitting his knee, laughing in my face. But you know what? I wasn't even mad because that was real. It was funny. It was funny. But I'm talking about not like, oh, okay, person failed, whatever. I'm talking about when you can visibly see someone that has hurt themselves. And I feel like I need to clear up to help themselves. Like, it's not my job. It's like, yes, it's your responsibility to do the work to heal.
Right.
But while you are healing, I'm going to do what I can to create a supportive environment for you so that you're not trying to heal and fight me at the same time.
Right. I mean, the Bible says you're called to be a helpmate. So it's like, yes, it's my responsibility for my personal growth. We all know that. But if you're a spouse, you're called to help. And like you said, I love what you say, create that environment that allows them to process and help. And we know how to do it. Like if you have kids, you do that for your kids. You create environments that allow them to flourish. But I think sometimes when you are married, you're just like, dude, that's your own. You get over it. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, maybe they will get over it. Or do you need to create an environment to help them get over it?
And I would even I would even say that you need to ask yourself why. If I'm extending more grace toward a friend or a stranger I do not know than I do my very own spouse, why? Is it because that person has hurt me? Is it because I have built up offenses toward them? What is it that I am able to extend compassion to someone who's not even in my own home, who the Bible says that we're supposed to be one with? Why is that? I would challenge you and have you ask yourself that question.
Yeah, because that falls into the old adage when people are like, well, home is a place where you go when you're tired of being nice.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, home should be a safe spot.
Yeah.
It should be a peaceful spot.
Yeah.
It should be that one place that everybody in the home has each other's back. Not a place to where it's like, oh my gosh.
Right.
I'm going to go home and it's, if I tell them that I've had a bad day or I tell them, hey, I'm feeling insecure, they're like, well, that's your problem.
Right.
Don't bring that into the house.
Right.
It's like, no, we're supposed to help.
Right. And it doesn't mean that helping means that we're blind to a behavior or we are enabling a behavior. It was a conversation that we just had with our boys. Like, love does not mean I excuse your behavior and I ignore some things that you are doing that's not healthy for you. Love still says, I'm going to bring to light some things that you are doing that is not okay, but I'm going to do it in a loving way.
Right.
I can be critical, but in a loving way. If the criticism is for the purpose of your growth, not to break you down or to tear you down.
Yeah. And I think that's the key is even when you're dealing with baggage and anything else, it's like, hey, I'm not trying to tear you down. I'm not trying to say you've got problems. I'm not trying to say all that stuff. I'm merely trying to say, hey, you're bringing this stuff in and it's affecting our relationship, but let's work through this. Let's figure out, hey, whatever that baggage is. And honestly, if you're probably sitting there right now, you probably know some things that have happened in your life that you're like, yeah, I tend to, when this happens, I tend to do this.
Yeah.
I'm saying if you're married, you got to be honest with your spouse and say, hey, working through this, but even if you're dating somebody and you're thinking long term and you got some issues, right? Don't try to hide the issues and wait till you get the ring and then all the issues come out, right? It's, hey, let's talk about these issues so they know kind of going in.
And I would also say it's not always it's for making sure that, like you said, because we don't want it to affect the relationship. But it's also like, because I love this person, I see you doing things that's not healthy for you.
Yeah,
I'm going to
bring
that to light as well. And in the growth, it's hey, I feel like you're kind of playing it safe right now. And I feel like, whatever reason that you're afraid to get uncomfortable, to not, out of fear of, to pursue that dream or whatever, like, be encouraging. I see you doing these things. You have so much more to offer. Like, I'm going to encourage you to kind of step outside of your comfort zone and to push you. It's like that could be a detriment to yourself as well, because you could be experiencing so many more greater things, but for whatever reason you're not. I recognize that, so I'm going to say something.
Yeah. Like, the strap's about to break. And that baggage is about to make you tumble.
Listen, that purse had me set up from the get-up. It had me set up from the get-up.
So,
what do you do? We talked about, dating. We talked about marriage. We could also deal with relationships with our parents they are dealing with past baggage from their childhood.
Yeah.
And it can sometimes affect your relationship with an adult child or your young child, right? How would you work through that?
I think what helped me more than anything else was that I realized as an adult that I did not understand as a child, obviously, adult things. And so it's easier for me to look back. Like, sometimes, you look back at things that your parents did. Now, I'm not, if there's abuse and there's stuff like that, I understand that. But I'm saying, like, things that happened or whatever, and you're like, well, why did they do that? And why did they do that? It's like, now that I am a parent, I'm sure our kids will probably sit someday and be like, well, they did this or they did that or whatever. And then when they have kids, they'll realize, man, why were they on me so much about this? Why were they on me so much about that? And it's like, I think looking back, it's just easier for me now to look back and say, man, I get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My dad would come home and he was super tired. He had 4 kids that were 6 years apart. And it's like, you come home in your 20s and you got 4 kids. And it's like, I got 2 kids and I'm in my 40s.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sometimes it's a lot.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that.
Yeah.
Our boys were 2 years apart. And I remember you stayed at home with them. And I would come home from work and you're like, dude, you need to take these. You need to take them now.
Yeah.
Right? I couldn't imagine 4.
Yeah.
That would be like,
Yeah.
And so now I can look back on it and I can say, you know what? I can understand some of the things, the pressures of life. Yeah. I think that's what you have to do. Because you can't change it.
Yeah. And I also feel like, you know, even being aware with how we are as parents, that's one thing I can see for myself, how we are as parents while your kids are at home. Because there's been times where I will overcompensate, not a decision, but I will overcompensate doing something for them, or
100%.
More sensitive about certain things. And it's because, I don't want them to experience what I experience, or I don't want them to, feel what I feel. So I will overcompensate. And sometimes, and it was really God that he was just like, hey, Victoria, you cannot parent your children how you wanted to be parented when you were a child. You have to parent them based on how they are. And that was really helpful for me, because I can't parent them through past trauma. I can't parent them through that filter, because that's not fair to them.
Right.
They didn't experience it. So.
And I think it also, maturity for me became, some of the things that I thought were hard were necessary for me when I was a child. In order to get me to where I am today. They made me the person that I was. And I'm not talking about, there were times where I thought, man, my parents were this or my parents are that. And now I look back on it and I'm thinking, thank God my parents were that way, because it's helped me now. Yeah. And so I think for me, it's kind of both. Then there's other stuff. I overcompensate a lot with our boys. Just because, and it's like, I love them.
You're a great dad.
It's like, oh no, they don't need to clean the kitchen. You're like, oh, they clean in the kitchen. They gonna clean kitchen. And they know, they'll text me. Be like, hey, you care if I, can I get cash? Or, hey, can I go here? And I'm like, yeah, can I play Xbox? Sounds great. And then I'm like, your mom's home. Why are you asking me this question? Because she'll ask 15 questions. Is your room clean?
Yeah.
Is your homework done? Did you do this? Did you do that? But I think it just comes from my baggage of a child. And it's like, so I think, I don't want to do that. But then because, and hopefully I'm explaining this right, because of that baggage, I'm not helping them teach them responsibility. I'm actually damaging them for later on.
Right. But the pro is that I think, in recognizing that there was adjustments that were made.
Yeah, you were the adjuster. Now I say, what'd your mom say?
No, not even just that, but I think it's because, yes, you do what your mom say, but I feel like, because let's be real, sometimes as a mama, yes, I can be like, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to do it. Not this is how you need to do it, but this is what you need to do, and, the rules, and making sure everything is whatever because of whatever. But I feel like you have provided a really good balance in balancing that out. But also, I do feel like sometimes in being their mom, and I don't know if other moms can relate, when a father needs to step in and, well, not needs to, but when a father does step in, and fathers, that sometimes we can kind of get in the way. Like, again, in the different situation, if it's like an abusive thing, like that's a completely different
100%.
conversation.
100%.
But if a father, especially to boys, young men, when the father comes in and needs to father in a way, and you don't like it, and so you rebut it in front of your child, with your husband, you're getting into the way of him developing a man, because at the end of the day, he's going to be a man one day, and we are not men. And not saying that, I know there are amazing single moms out there who has young boys that had done a great job doing that, so I'm not saying that. But I had to recognize in myself, okay, Victoria, there's a 2-parent home. And as they got older, there were many times I've said to you, like, hey, I know sometimes I've, kind of bogarted the way you felt like something needed to happen. I'm going to give you full reins. Do what you got to do, right? Because real talk, it was because you are, and I'm not trying to gas you up, but you are an amazing human being. And if our boys can be a tenth of who you are, which they won't be, they're going to be who you are, if not more. But if they can have any part of who you are, I want you to do what you got to do to make sure that happens. And I don't want to get in the way of that. And so, in stepping back and doing that. But I think you've done a really great job with, as they've gotten older, like, yeah, you were super lenient. Sometimes he pulled them out of school when they were in elementary school, out of school early
sent a
just to
note
take
home.
him out to lunch. But those are memories they're going to have. You know what I mean?
Saying. Plus, they sent a note home and were like, hey, and you were like, have you been taking them out of school?
What is this?
And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, if you take them out for so many more times, you know, we're going to have a sit down. I'm like, they're my kids.
Right, but, you know, school, you got to be in the school.
She's like, you can't take them out
Yeah,
anymore. And the boys are like, are you coming to get us? And I'm like, I can't, man. They won't let me.
Dang it, Mom.
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking. But I feel like, you know, as they've gotten older, I do feel like you have rebalanced it. I get it when they were younger. You know, you were super cool dad, fun to be around, all those fun things. But I do feel like you have done a beautiful job with the balance and transitioning of, hey, when we need to go hard, we need to go hard. Hey, when we need to go soft, we need to go soft. I usually have to come in the encouraging part when you have gone hard and be like, was that too much? Yeah. No, babe, you're good.
Like, do you think they hate me? She's like, who cares? You think they're mad at me? And?
I do say that.
Well, I love this episode on baggage because I do think we all have it. We all have different things that we bring in. There's different things that we may not know that we have. But the first obvious step is you got to recognize it within yourself, and then you got to get some help.
Absolutely.
Whether it's your spouse or whoever, but you got to get some help.
Yes, therapy, life coach, whatever you need to do, you know. Absolutely, I agree.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Love Encompass podcast. You can follow us.
Yes, you can follow us on Love Encompass Podcast on Instagram. And if you're watching us on YouTube, do not forget to hit that subscribe button and follow us there as well. And we are on Apple and Spotify, obviously, if you're listening on the podcast. But we really have been enjoying this. And, you know, make sure you continue to tune in. And if you haven't already, share it with a friend. If you feel like there's somebody out there that can benefit from this podcast, please share.
Yeah, and leave comments. And you can follow us personally on Instagram. I'm just Phil Clemens, and you are
Victoria Clemens.
Right, so you can follow us on there, and then send us. If you want us to talk about something, let us know.
Yeah.
We'd love to talk about it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to see you the next time on the Love Encompass podcast.
Until then, see you later.